Savage Joy here with Real Progressive. Today, I am actually having someone back for a second time. This gentleman, Chesa Boudin, is running for DA in San Francisco, and he's a really great candidate. And I wanted to bring him back as soon as possible, just because, as usual, establishment Dems are, trying to pull some crap. A lot of people think it's just the DNC, but unfortunately it happens all over. So I definitely wanted to get the word out since voting has actually started for the race. So, Chesa, in any case, we can talk about your campaign first, just so we can introduce you to viewers who may not have seen you last time. So can you, do you want to get into why you're running?
Sure. So just to kind of give a refresher for folks who missed last time around, or for folks who don't remember, my name is Chesa Boudin. I'm a candidate for San Francisco District Attorney, and I'm really different than your typical district attorney candidate in a lot of ways. So for one thing, when I was an infant, my parents left me at the babysitter. They never came back to get me. That day they participated in an armed robbery. It tragically left 3 men dead. And obviously, those 3 families were destroyed by what my parents did. And so was mine in a different way. My mother ended up serving 22 years in prison. My father is still incarcerated today and will probably never get out. As a result of what my parents did that day, I started visiting prisons before I can remember. And really, my earliest memories are going through steel gates and getting searched by guards just to see my parents. Years and now decades of prison visits taught me some really hard lessons about how broken our criminal justice system is, and about how racist and what mass incarceration is really all about. And as a result, I started advocating for criminal justice reform at a very early age. And I've been fighting my whole life to make the justice system work for all of us, not only for the rich and powerful. I overcame early childhood challenges. I ended up at Yale Law School. I had a Rhodes Scholarship. And after all that, I decided to become a public defender here in San Francisco, because I wanted to make sure that even people too poor to pay for their own attorney had access to equal justice. And what I saw day in, day out in the courts was the same thing, really, that I had seen as a child of incarcerated parents. I saw a criminal justice system that was tremendously expensive, racist, punitive, inhumane, doing nothing to prevent crime, doing far too little for victims of crime, and really making us less safe. And so I started fighting for change through impact litigation, through a fight against money bail and against immigration, ICE holds on people in county jail. And this year is the first time in 110 years that there's no incumbent running for re-election in the San Francisco DA race. It's a wide open race. And I announced my campaign back in January as a progressive alternative to the status quo tough on crime approach. It's built a tremendous amount of momentum, gotten national attention, grassroots organizing, huge numbers of volunteers on the ground. And the closer we got to the election, the more and more scared the Democratic machine got here in San Francisco. And I think for good reason. We were winning the race. And so they did something which the ACLU has called undemocratic, which the ACLU has condemned. And again, the ACLU is nonpartisan, has not endorsed any candidate in this race. But what they did was they arranged to have the mayor appoint one of my main competitors to serve as interim district attorney for literally 11 court days before the election. So she gets to advertise to the voters that she's the incumbent in what was really the first open race in 110 years. We all know she's not going to do anything substantive in the 11 days that she has in office. What she's going to do is keep campaigning, do press conferences, and get a tremendous amount of free media attention and name recognition because of the mayor's interference with this election. So a lot of folks have been very upset about it here on the ground, and it reminds people of the kind of partisan, undemocratic maneuvers that we saw the DNC do against Bernie last time around, and frankly that we see President Trump engaging in almost every day
Yeah, this is definitely very calculated. It's from reading the articles and reading statements and everything, it is so blatantly obvious that this is done and on purpose. And furthermore, unfortunately, a lot of voters don't do research on things like this. So they may think she's already been, she's already good to go and may not even vote now, which is going to hurt you.
Right. So a lot of people, exactly. Some voters are confused and think that means the race is not happening anymore or that the election's over. Of course, that's not true. We still have an election on November 5th. We still need people to get out and vote. And I'll tell you, I think so far the mayor's move has backfired. I mean, yes, it has gotten her preferred candidate a lot of free press and a lot of attention, but much of that attention has been negative. A lot of people are very critical. For example, former state senator Mark Leno, who was neutral, was retired from politics, was staying out of the race, jumped in to support me after the mayor made this announcement. And people were so upset that the mayor did this that protesters actually shut down the press conference where they were going to announce the appointment. People are really angry, and we see it in terms of the grassroots mobilizations we have every week. Our volunteer base has increased about 5-fold since the mayor made this announcement, and we already had the most volunteers. So we're excited about people's commitment to democratic process. We're excited about the fact that voters really want a district attorney who's accountable to them, not to the mayor.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of those situations where, of course, I would vote for you over them in a heartbeat, but also this is about democracy. Anyone who cares about someone being installed and something democratic should automatically vote for you.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? There are certain positions that the mayor gets to appoint, like the chief of police. And then there's other positions that are elected. And there's a reason why in our democratic system, we have positions that are elected because we need checks and balances. One of the critical roles of the district attorney is to be independent of the mayor so that if there's corruption at City Hall, if there's criminal activity, kickback schemes, malfeasance, the district attorney is free to investigate and prosecute, even people in government. And you cannot possibly expect that someone who owes their job to an appointment by the mayor is going to have that level of independence. It's something that has led voters across the city to be really upset. There are some polls that came out earlier this week that were published that show that only 25% of people in San Francisco approve of this appointment. I was out this morning campaigning at about 7 a.m. at a Muni station, a bus stop here in the city. And I had someone walk up to me and say, I was on the fence about who to vote for, but when I saw what the mayor did, it made me decide to vote for you. And there's no way I can vote for her. Democratic process matters. And we just hope that the criminal cases she prosecutes are more just than the electoral campaign she's running.
Absolutely. This is, I can't even fathom how disheartening it must be because you have gained so much support. I mean, you have ridiculous endorsements like Sean King. He's been posting about this all the time. And I mean, he has over 1 million followers. This isn't just California talking about this. This is
right. It's going viral. Yeah. I mean, we put up a campaign video the day before yesterday. And in literally 24 hours, our campaign video got over 100,000 views on Twitter alone. People around the country are excited about this movement. They're excited about this race. And people in San Francisco are showing up in droves to donate in small dollar amounts, to endorse us, to go door to door, to make phone calls. And, the machine is not used to being challenged in this way. They weren't ready for it. They weren't expecting it. And so they're not playing fair.
Absolutely. I've seen this before, and it's so crazy because the more progressive you are and the more backing you have, the more of a chance they're going to try and install someone to kneecap you. It's incredible. So what is something that we can do as people who can't vote for you, but I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania, but I want to do my best to share this with everyone, especially in California, to make sure they vote. The election is November 5th, but now can you vote by mail?
Yeah, so early voting, a couple things. Early voting has already begun. In fact, nearly 18,000 ballots have already been cast in this race. So people are mailing in their ballots every single day. A couple things I'll request supporters do right now, even if you don't live in San Francisco. First, get on social media. Tell your friends about the race. Tell your friends in San Francisco to vote. Make sure they know about our campaign, and do that right away. Second, donate. We need even small dollar donations because we are going up against a machine that just handed hundreds of thousands of dollars in free press to my main opponent. And here's the other thing. Literally just today, we learned that the Realtors Association and the Police Officers Union have created independent expenditure PACs focused on attacking me and supporting her. We know who we're up against. They know that I present a real challenge to their impunity, to the ways that they fraudulently evict poor and working tenants, to the way that they get away with literally murder, and they're scared. And so they are doing what we know the establishment does, which is they're backing their candidate, they're attacking me, they're using lies. And if we're going to get our message out there, we need people power to help us do it. So please go online, go to our website, donate even small amounts. And then the third thing is, if you want to volunteer for the campaign, reach out to us again through our website. There's work you can do to help the campaign from wherever you are in the country, making phone calls to help turn out local volunteers, to talk to voters for us. Sign up on our website to volunteer, and we will get you involved right away.
Awesome. Now, at this point, it is just you and the person they're trying to install, correct? Or are there other running?
Technically, it's a four-way race, and San Francisco uses what's called ranked choice voting. So what that means is for us to win, we need some of the people who cast one of the other candidates as their main choice to put us as their second choice. And we expect that's going to happen in large part because people are really angry about the mayor's appointment, about the mayor's efforts to undermine democratic process. And so a lot of people are saying anybody but the machine candidate.
Absolutely. Yes, I did see the video where the young man was escorted out for, yelling and saying this is undemocratic. So props to him, because I can't fathom watching your campaign be stifled like this.
Yeah, the funny thing is that video that you're referring to occurred after there had already been multiple different attempts by the mayor and my main opponent to have a press conference outside in a public space. And groups of protesters shut down each of those attempts. They kept moving to different areas and finally went inside a private restaurant and had a phalanx of San Francisco police officers blocking the entrance. The young man you're referring to somehow snuck in and was able to still make his voice heard, as part of a protest, but they would not let the public into this press conference.
Wow. As far as your campaign goes, I know that you have a very progressive platform. You want to end cash bail. You want to eliminate for-profit prisons. You do support voting in prison.
Correct.
And expunging records which have people who have been arrested for marijuana. What is one of the most passionate things that should you be elected you would want to take care of first?
Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, really, it's not just about one policy or another. I mean, this is about transforming our approach to criminal justice and public safety from top to bottom. It means, for example, that instead of just punishing people when crimes are committed and having a tough on crime punitive approach that feeds into the prison industrial complex and mass incarceration, my focus as district attorney is preventing crime and healing the harm that crime causes to victims. Right now, victims are used as evidence to secure convictions. They're not healed. They're not put at the center. They're not given a voice. And right now, the system perpetuates a cycle of incarceration. Recidivism rates are sky high in California and across the state. We're not rehabilitating people. We're not preventing crime. We're simply using the criminal justice system as a way to punish mostly poor Black and brown folks. We've got to do a better job. And so my campaign is really about that. I'll give you a concrete example. When I'm district attorney, every victim of every crime will have the right to participate in restorative justice if they choose to. Second, when I'm district attorney, we will not measure our office's success or the success of individual attorneys that work for me based on conviction rates or length of sentence. We'll measure it instead through things like recidivism rates, through things like victim satisfaction with the process. Those are metrics that are actually related to public safety, not just punishment.
Absolutely. Why are you open to looking at the way things are, the way they do things in other countries, because their recidivism rates are like, nil compared to ours?
Absolutely. I've done a lot of comparative work around the country, around the world. I published the first ever 50-state survey of prison visitation policies that I did in partnership with the Association of State Correctional Administrators a few years ago. And I visited prisons and jails, detention centers in at least half a dozen other countries, from Bolivia to Venezuela to England to Rwanda and beyond, Ecuador and Chile, many, many other countries. I've had a chance to see that the way we do things in this country is not only massively expensive and inhumane, but it's really ineffective. I want to give you a couple statistics for context. The United States incarcerates 25% of the world's prisoners. We lead the world in locking people up right here in the land of the free. It's a disgrace. It's destroying our communities, and it's not making us safer. It's so bad that in the United States, whether you're in Texas or Florida, whether you're in New York or California, whether you're in Minnesota or Missouri, the majority of Americans across the country have an immediate family member who is either currently or formerly incarcerated. It has become a defining part of modern American culture to have a loved one who has spent time living in a cage. We've got to do a better job at preventing crime and intervening when crime occurs. And I'll tell you another thing. Mass incarceration is not something that is distributed equally or equitably amongst our country. Today we have more African Americans who are on criminal justice supervision than were in slavery in the 1860s. San Francisco is a city that has a tremendously progressive self-image and reputation, and in some ways for good reason. But if you look at the data, if you look at the statistics about what's happening on the ground in San Francisco, there is a lot of room for improvement. San Francisco's population is about 5% African American, but our county jail is more than 50% African American. San Francisco incarcerates African Americans at a higher per capita rate than any other major city in the country. We need to do a better job, and my campaign is about making sure we end mass incarceration, reduce racial disparities, hold police accountable when they commit crimes, and find ways to treat the root causes of crime, like mental illness and drug addiction and poverty, not simply wait for crimes to be committed and then punish the people who've committed them.
Now, as far as people being caught with drugs on their person, do you support sending them to rehab instead of incarcerating them?
I think the war on drugs was a colossal failure, and I refuse to double down on that failure. And look, we all know that there is a lot of responsible, consensual use of illicit drugs. We don't support it or encourage it, but we know that it's mostly poor people and people of color who get criminally prosecuted for it. There's a lot of other people who do it in the privacy of their homes, and nobody intervenes or seems to have much of a problem with it. We need to start using a public health approach, a harm reduction approach to the addiction crisis in this country. It's something we've seen done in response to the opioid crisis, for example. I've worked in San Francisco's drug courts as a public defender, and I've worked with people who are battling addiction and who've become justice system involved because of their addiction. And I had a client who told me, in San Francisco, it is easier to get high than it is to get help. We need to change that. We need to make sure that when people are seeking help battling their addiction, they have access to 24/7 on-demand mental health services, drug treatment services, detox facilities, safe injection sites. That medical harm reduction approach is more cost effective, it's more humane, and ultimately it does far more to reduce the challenges that the epidemic presents in our communities than simply locking people up every time they interact with a police officer while they're using drugs.
Absolutely. Do you support the decriminalization of sex work?
Absolutely. You know, I want to tell you why, because it's a critical issue and it's an area where, excuse me, once I'm getting another call, it's an area where, Tiffany Caban and I and many other progressive leaders of the decarceral movement in criminal justice see eye to eye. And it's not just about a commitment to allowing people to earn a living through physical labor. And it's not just about recognizing that sex work is work, but it's also about having more effective tools to combat sex trafficking and coerced sex work. There's a huge difference between consensual sex work, where an adult chooses to earn a living by selling their body and engaging in sex work, and on the other hand, sex trafficking, particularly of minors or of immigrants who are trafficked to this country to engage in sex work, or a forced pimping and pandering. In order for us to effectively respond to the latter categories, to the trafficking and the forced sex work, we need the cooperation and support of consensual sex workers. We need to ensure that when someone is being sex trafficked or forced to engage in sex work, they can safely come forward to the police and ask for help. And I'll tell you right now, one of the most common things that sex traffickers tell the people who they're victimizing is, if you go to the police, you'll be arrested for sex work. And it works. And it's true in too many jurisdictions. So as San Francisco's next district attorney, I'm committed to taking sex trafficking and underage sex work and coerced sex work unbelievably seriously. And to do that, I'm committed to decriminalizing consensual adult sex work.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something I don't see that often on candidates' campaign pages. And when I do see it, I'm very pleased with it, because it's something that gets ignored way too much. And these people are being put at risk every day. Now, as far as immigration goes, I know you have defended some immigrants before. Is there something, particular case which stands out to you?
Yeah, I want to take you back a few years. I want to go back to 2012. In 2012, San Francisco still had a policy of handing any undocumented immigrant who was taken to jail over to ICE. Didn't matter their age, didn't matter the charge, didn't even matter if they were ever formally charged with a crime. Anybody booked into the jail would be held until ICE came to pick them up. Now, as a young public defender, I was assigned one of those cases. I was assigned the case of a grandmother from El Salvador who had been in this country for more than 25 years. She had a U.S. citizen son who had fought for our country in the Marines. She had a U.S. citizen daughter who was employed by the federal government here in San Francisco. And this grandmother had been arrested for shoplifting Christmas presents from the Gap for her grandkids. She was taken to jail, charged with a misdemeanor, and told that it didn't matter what happened in her criminal case. At the end of the case, she would be handed over to ICE and deported. Now, I speak fluent Spanish, and I was outraged at the notion that this grandmother would face such a severe consequence that a U.S. citizen would never face for the same crime, despite her son's service and her daughter's service to our country. I persuaded her, with her daughter's help and with the help of a community that spoke Spanish, that she should give us time. She should not plead guilty right away. She should not try to get out of jail right away and get handed over to ICE. And after a couple months of hard work, we persuaded the sheriff that he had the legal power and the moral obligation to say no to ICE, to stand up to ICE, and to allow this woman to plead guilty to what she had done and receive the same punishment that a U.S. citizen would face and go back to her family and her community. After that first case, I did it again with another young man from Mexico, and then again with another client. And eventually the sheriff asked me to write a policy of non-cooperation with ICE. This is early 2013. I wrote that policy about 6 months before San Francisco's Board of Supervisors passed a resolution called Due Process for All, Sanctuary City, prohibiting our sheriff from cooperating with ICE. I am proud to have led that work. And I'll go back even further. I sued ICE when I was in law school for illegally arresting people. I've got a track record of standing up to ICE, and I'm committed as district attorney to not only creating an immigration unit within the district attorney's office to help immigrants who are victims of crime get visas and to ensure we're not discriminating against immigrants who are charged with crimes, but also to stand up with every resource we've got to the racist, xenophobic, nativist Trump administration's anti-immigrant agenda.
Absolutely. Do you, how do you think that something, let's say a federal job guarantee was implemented, how do you think that that would help former prisoners?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of the question. How would tell me again, how would what help former prisoners?
Federal job guarantee?
Well, so I think what we need to do is recognize that a lot of people who are in this country don't want to be committing crimes, but if they're not given mechanisms to obtain legal employment, they're left with very few alternatives. So, one example is in San Francisco, we have a big problem with drug sales. And certain neighborhoods like the Tenderloin are just overrun with open air drug dealing and drug use. And I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm talking about serious, potentially lethal drugs, methamphetamines, fentanyl, heroin. About a third of the people arrested in San Francisco for selling illegal drugs are young men from Honduras. They don't speak English. Many of them have been trafficked here against their will. And those that came here voluntarily came here primarily to flee the violence in Honduras and to seek economic opportunity. They get to San Francisco and they don't find economic opportunity. They find networks of people who put them to work selling drugs. If we want to stop the drug sales, we need to not only treat the drug addiction that's driving the demand for drugs, but we also need to find other economic opportunities for people who've come here and whose families are depending on them to send money back home. We cannot expect people to be deterred by the threat of a felony when they have families that are starving in Honduras, or coyotes and traffickers who are threatening to kill their families if they don't come up with money every month.
Absolutely. How is ICE in San Francisco now? Are they still like out every single day, or how is it working?
San Francisco is a little better than some neighboring jurisdictions right now with regard to ICE. But I'll tell you, we are very worried about the Trump administration escalating ICE raids in San Francisco. It has happened more and more under the Trump administration. And in neighboring Santa Clara County, really, part of the San Francisco Bay Area commuter community, we see ICE agents doing things like going to court, waiting for people who are court ordered to appear for their criminal cases or for testimony, and arresting them when they come to court. It's interfering with the judicial process. It's causing people who need to come to court to be scared to do so. And it's requiring local judges to then issue warrants for people who are ordered to be there and not coming. Because of that kind of interference with our local judicial process, I've committed publicly that if ICE agents do that in San Francisco, I will file criminal charges for obstruction of justice.
Awesome. So as far as the presidential campaign, have you endorsed anyone? Do you have a pick on who you think is best for criminal justice?
I am really excited about Bernie Sanders. I have endorsed him. I've spoken at many of his rallies. There's other candidates I like. I want to be clear. It's, I think we have an exciting field, but I think when you look at the way Bernie has shaped the debate around Medicare for all, around college and educational debt, and also around criminal justice issues, ending private prisons and ending money bail, I think Bernie is someone who has consistently been at the front of the pack around so many progressive issues that are now being accepted into the mainstream of the Democratic Party, and it's in large part thanks to his leadership. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the San Francisco Berniecrats and also of the National Our Revolution movement, and many more who are part of that movement.
Absolutely. What is it, since you've read his criminal justice bill, which is just like awesome. It's so great. It doesn't have sex work in it, though. That was disappointing. We're
going to keep pushing him. We're going to keep pushing him on that issue.
Yes. But other than that, what other things that we haven't discussed that, do you think are imperative?
Ending private prisons is really critical. That's one thing. Decriminalizing sex work is another thing. Treating the addiction crisis and the mental health crisis through a harm reduction public health lens is imperative. Recognizing that we incarcerate people for longer than any other country in the world and that we don't rehabilitate them. So making sure that we're not just punishing, but we're holding people accountable for crimes they've committed in a way that both heals the harm and breaks the cycle. And then another thing is being really conscious about the racial disparities in the criminal justice system. I talked about that earlier, and one of the people I'm proud to have as an endorser in this race, Angela Davis, says it really well. Angela Davis says, it is not enough for us to say, I'm not racist. We need to be anti-racist. We need to be proactive in developing policies, especially in the criminal justice space, that are anti-racist. I've announced a whole series of very specific policies that have won me the endorsement, not only of Angela Davis, but of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, of people like Kat Brooks in Oakland, people like Felicia Jones in San Francisco, Sean King, and John Legend, folks at the national level doing amazing work around racial justice. Policies that I've developed in partnership with leaders in the field who understand that we need to be proactive about rooting out racial bias at every step of the criminal justice process. Absolutely.
So what do you want to leave with our audience as far as your campaign? And also, before I forget, I definitely want every single person watching to share this. I want you to tag every single person in California, San Francisco, anything like that, because we need to get the votes out for Chesa so that he can take on this corruption he's facing.
Absolutely. And I do have to get off soon. We've got a busy day on the campaign trail here, so I want to leave your viewers with the following message. People power is what democracy is all about. And all too often, whether it's the 45th president of the United States or the 45th mayor of San Francisco, our officials in power forget that it's about the people, and they focus narrowly on their own power and protecting themselves and their interests. We've got to remind them that there is a price to pay when you mess with our democracy, that the people of San Francisco want and deserve a district attorney who's accountable to them, not to the mayor. And that's exactly what the people are going to get from me on November 5th. But to get there, we need to make these last 18 days count. We've got to show them that social media and grassroots organizing and small dollar fundraising is what it takes to win an election, not just the help of the establishment.
Absolutely. Can you leave everyone with your website, email, Twitter?
Absolutely, sure. So I'm on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm easy to find. I'm at Chesa Boudin. That's CHESA BOUDIN. And my website is really simple as well. It's www.chesaboudin.com, CHESA BOUDIN.com. Check us out, donate, sign up to volunteer, follow us on social media, and get the word out to your friends in San Francisco. They've still got 3 days to register for early voting. The election's not till November 5th. There's plenty of time for people to register to vote, to get involved in volunteering. We'd love your help. We'd love your support. We are part of a national movement. Please join us.
All right. I'm definitely going to make a post about that they have 3 more days to register. Thank you all so much for watching. As I said, please share, please follow. And thank you so much, Chesa, for coming back on.
Really appreciate it.
Really enjoy speaking with you. You would be a huge asset. So best of luck with everything.
Thanks for your work. Have a great afternoon. Appreciate it.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.